This is the Litigation Psychology Podcast brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. I'm Dr. Steve Wood, and back from several weeks of travel. Today's topic actually grew out of the conversation that we had in our presentations as it relates to nuclear verdicts, as it relates to attorney advertisement. So it got me thinking, kind of what's going on from a social psychological standpoint about why people have these opinions of the Trucking Association and why when bad things happen, are everybody so quick to sue. So I'm going to back up and start really kind of with the concept as the mere exposure effect. And really at its core, the mere exposure effect is the idea that the more and more we get presented with things, the more and more we come to like them, or we come to have familiarity with them and come to develop thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes towards that topic. In the COVID era, the more and more we saw about medical professionals being heroes, the more we saw about first responders being heroes. We just consistently saw it. And it led people to really, thank those individuals, because we were just being constantly inundated with the fact of, hey, look at how great these people are. Look at all the things that they're doing. And rightfully so. They deserved all the credit for all the things that they did during COVID. And as it refers to the trucking industry, there was this small uptick of positive beliefs with thanks to the truckers, thanks for all that you do. You're making sure we get all of our products. And as we've seen now, kind of from our research, that positive belief of the trucking industry has started to slip back to where it was at pre-COVID. And I think one of the main reasons why, when we put it in perspective of the mere exposure effect, is that we're constantly being inundated now with, look at how bad trucking companies are. Look at the things that are happening. We have billboards that say, been in a wreck, call this number, put it, or you see commercials, right? Here in Texas, we have Jim Adler, the Texas Hammer. And a lot of that stuff, the whole premise of the commercial is to push forward this idea that the trucking industry and truckers in themselves are big, bad, scary machines, and that people should be scared of them. So go figure that when we do research with cases that involve trucking, we'll ask jurors initially on questionnaires about their beliefs towards the trucking companies. And we always tend to see a lot of people that have negative opinions. I can remember vividly people who talk about having anxiety and having panic attacks just getting next to a truck on the highway, because they're afraid that all the things they've heard or all the things they've seen, that this trucker is going to be playing on his phone or her phone, fall asleep at the wheel because they've been driving too long, not paying attention, and that they're going to get pushed off the road into the ditch. So it's changed kind of the psychology of how drivers who are not in trucks are viewing these trucks on the road. And like I said, it leads to negative opinions of the trucking industries. So when that goes forward in trial, jurors are coming in with the perception, with the attitude, with the pre-existing beliefs that trucks are big, scary vehicles, so that when you hear things that have gone bad, it's really easy for jurors to say, see, I knew it. It reaffirms everything that I've already known, that trucks are dangerous and that they're just trying to put warm bodies in seats in order to make money at the risk of people who are actually on the road. So the more and more we see these things, the more and more we see news articles, news stories, billboards, all these things are leading people to believe that the trucking industry and truckers in and of themselves are dangerous individuals, which, like I said, doesn't help as it goes into trial. That's the first one, right? Mere exposure effect. The more we're seeing things, the more we have familiarity with it, but at the same time, it could backfire and be a negative opinion. The second topic is the idea of social proof. Got the book here, Dr. Bob Cialdini, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. Great book, read it 2 or 3 times. The idea of social proof is in instances where things are ambiguous and we're not necessarily sure on how to act, we will tend to go with what the group does. So I can think about it all the time when I'm traveling and when I'm flying. And it just happened recently where someone came up to TSA, the TSA line, and this woman was 30 to 40 feet back from the TSA agent in order to go up and show her ID. So after she finally went up, the guy that was in front of me, he stopped 30 feet back. No rhyme or reason why he did it. And, because he had gone off of what she was doing. And I leaned over to him and said, "Hey, man, we don't need to be 30 feet back. We can move up." And he said, thanks for telling me that, because he was basing his decision on what she was doing because he didn't know. Like I said, think about it in your day-to-day life. There's a lot of times where we get into instances where maybe it's, waiting in a line and we see that everybody's waiting in one long line, but there's a second line over here that nobody's in, but nobody goes over to that because they're not quite sure what they're supposed to do. So rather than separate themselves from the group and say, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Let me assess the situation. They just go off of what's in front of them, what everybody else is doing, because no one really wants to go against the flow of society and go against the flow of what other people are doing. So we tend to follow the pattern of what everyone else is doing. Put that in perspective of the trucking industry, right? All the different things about, as I was saying before, about billboards. And if you've been injured, you need to sue. If you've been injured in a car wreck, if you've been injured here, if you've been injured there, call this attorney. So what ends up happening, right, is people get injured, people have things happen, and they're not sure what they're supposed to do, but they know they've seen a bunch of billboards where people have said, my attorney got me $400,000 for my injury. Well, then lay people will think, okay, well, this is the thing to do, right? There's people out there who are getting compensated for when they're injured. Maybe I should call and see if I can get compensated for my injury. And that's another thing we talk about social proof is that's why you see celebrity endorsements. That's why you see user reviews on Amazon. Think about when you go out to buy something on Amazon, if you're pulling it up and you look, one of the first things you do, right, is you probably look at the actual ratings of the product. And if it has 3 stars, the chances of you buying it are going to be lower than if it had 4.5 or 5 stars, because you're using that information of those individuals to say, okay, well, if other people have bought this and have had bad luck, my chances are I'm going to have bad luck too. Or other people have bought it, other people have liked it, other people have been happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and buy it because I'm going to use that information from others in order to help make my decision. Well, therein lies a problem, right? At least from an Amazon perspective, that's why you see some people who will fake these 5-star reviews, because they know if they put the things out there and people have thought that they've had a good experience with it, then others will be more apt to buy the product, whether or not those advertisements, those reviews are legitimate or not. Okay. Same type of thing as, like I said, as it comes to trucking industry, as it comes to whether or not people are going into litigation, is they see this person just won $400,000, then this attorney must have been good. This attorney must be good at what they do. I've been injured, therefore I'm going to call this attorney. So it's powerful from a psychological perspective about why people do it. And it makes attorneys, especially the plaintiffs bar, a lot of money, because they know they can essentially make people say, okay, suing large corporations, suing trucking companies when you get in trouble is okay. The days of litigiousness and the days of people looking down their nose at people who are suing all the time and saying that we're a litigious society, and if you're actually filing a lawsuit, there's something wrong with you. Those days are pretty much over, right? Now it's more acceptable. It's more, socially acceptable for you to push forward a lawsuit, and people are going to, rather than look at you differently, they're going to applaud you and say, yeah, stick it to that company. You got injured, you should be compensated for it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you should be compensated. So people have had that social pressure alleviated from them as far as feeling bad about filing lawsuits. So trucking industry, what can you do in that? Right, using these two concepts, I think what we need to see more of is the putting out of the positive messages. Use the billboard, get a billboard, Texas Trucking Association, other state trucking associations, get a billboard out there and put the positive message about the trucking association and the trucking industry. Put it out there so that when people are going down the road, on 290 as they head down in Houston, put it out there so that people can see the good of the trucking companies, the good of the trucking associations, and what that'll allow you to do, right? Going back to when we talk about mere exposure, the more and more they see the billboard, the more and more they see the messages about how positive the trucking industry is, the benefits of the trucking industry, the good things the trucking industry is doing, it'll help to counteract that negative belief. Because then when something happens, right, and people need to make decisions on whether they should sue, rather than just being completely inundated and completely desensitized to the fact that the trucking industry is bad, horrible people. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to have conflicting beliefs. They're going to have, well, wait a second. I was just being told all the time that the trucking industry is bad. But now I have all this other information to show me that the trucking industry is good. The things that they've done is good, it's positive. Now it creates this kind of cognitive dissonance, this kind of distortion in the potential person's mind about what do I do with that. So now you have conflicting opinions, and now what you allow is for people to seek out and get additional information and have much more rational thoughts rather than just latching on to the initial trucking industry bad. It's good to sue. Boom. It's a no-brainer for me. Now I've been injured. I don't have anything telling me otherwise. I don't have anything telling me that, the trucking industry is good. All I've seen is bad, 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 bad. So I think, like you said, from the trucking industry standpoint, there needs to be more positive messages, commercials, billboards, pamphlets, whatever it is you can get the information out. When I talk in speeches, there's a strip on the way from my house to Houston, and there's a sign there that says, we love our truckers. Thanks for all that you do. Now, it's on the side of the road. It's probably 4 feet by 3 feet. I mean, great sign, awesome sign, but a lot of people, I don't know how much they pay attention to it, but think about that in comparison to these large billboards that you see outside of these major cities, in contrast to that, right? These huge billboards that people see all the time versus these small signs. So I would like to see a lot more of these signs across the country. And I'd like to see them bigger, and I'd like to see them in more traveled areas. Like I said, so we can let the country know and society know the positives about the trucking industry versus constantly the negative. Because from a psychological perspective, it's absolutely influencing your prospective jury pool, and it's absolutely influencing the individuals who may, when experienced with something involving a truck, going to make them more likely probably to sue and feel more comfortable at suing and not think twice about it. So this has been my somewhat of a Kanaski rant on the solo podcast from Courtroom Sciences. Go to courtroomsciences.com for all of your litigation psychology needs, articles, blogs, all of that is up there. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me at swood@courtroomsciences.com. We'll look to see you on another podcast. Take care.